All right, we're good. All right, everyone, welcome. Welcome to our online tips for success presentation today. I am Katherine Wu. I am the Director of Disability Services here at Berkeley, and we have some of our wonderful staff here. We have Vincent Moss, who's the assistant, and he takes care of everything that gets the whole machine running smoothly. So smoothly and seamlessly, right? And we have counselors here. We have Santa Rock and Sandra Coppola, and we have one of our coaches here, Cheyenne Lee. So I'm so happy to be here with 4 of our many staff that are here to help you, the student, succeed and hopefully have a great learning experience while you are here at Berkeley. So the purpose of today, we're really, originally we were going to have a discussion. I was going to have a discussion with another student, but she couldn't make it today. So I am going to be tossing out some different techniques that people have found to be helpful. And let me see if I can get to the next screen. There you go. And like in everything, some techniques work better for some people than others, right? So, it's not about, oh, if this technique works for like 85% of people, then I have to do it. It has to work for me. No, the point of today is for you to find what works for you. And I'm gonna be giving you different tools, okay? And I hope you can take what sounds like a good idea for you to use yourself. And in addition, if we have enough people who can participate, when we throw out these ideas, we're also going to talk about what gets in the way of them being effective, right? Because there's always something that gets in the way. So I want to get started with setting goals. So being online is hard because, first of all, you don't have someone sitting there right in front of you that's like on top of you, making sure you're always on track, right? So it's really self-driven. You have to get yourself motivated, get your surroundings cleared. It's not like you can leave your home environment with everything that's around you and all the responsibilities around you and go to some quiet classroom where you just have all these people paying attention to the professor telling you what to do and how to study, right? So one thing that really, really is important is that always have a reminder of why you are in school. So this constant reminder is sort of like, it's a goal that can, it's your end goal, right? What you are working towards. So for those of you who are on, if you can, type in your what for you, take a moment to think about this. And this is like something you did actually when you first started Berkeley and used student orientation, right? What is the reason you're enrolled in college? What's the one reason that really gets your blood going, your heart racing, and your spirit soaring when you think about why you're in college? To take a moment, write it in the chat. See how participatory everybody is. Okay, well, some common reasons, oh, there you go, to learn. So the love of learning, right? Sometimes it's just nice to have someone present an idea when it's so big and broad, you don't really know where to start. They're saying, okay, this is what's important and these are the facts. It's a good starting point for you to jump off from learning. Great, let's see. To better your life, absolutely, right? So the more you learn and the more you see around you, it really helps you gain more perspective and improve your future, maybe to get a better job, new things in your field. So learning is something, it sort of keeps us young, right? It keeps us from getting stale. It keeps us fresh, literally like injecting oxygen into us and having fresh water in our body to rejuvenate itself and keep it going. Let's see. Financial stability, right? So, a lot of people come to college for the hope of getting a better job, so that you, sometimes you have great experience, but they're like, without that degree, we can't promote you to a management position. So it's really just another confirmation of all the skills you already have. And the point of getting a job, that is really important, right? Like you're literally in school. Like even if you're getting loans, it still costs money. So you're here to invest in your own future. So all great goals. Now, I'm sure many of you may already have these goals in mind. You already knew this before coming in today, right? So really what happens is, obstacles get in the way. So, I like this quote, obstacles are placed in our way to see if what we want is really worth fighting for. Okay, well, sometimes, all right, we kind of maybe have a goal of like, yeah, I want to make more money, but then like, you're not really sure what you want to study. So you're like, okay, I'll do criminal justice. But then once you start, you're like, oh, this is not what I thought criminal justice is. So maybe you're like, okay, I know I need to be in college so I can get a better job, but I don't really know in what. So sometimes starting school is good because you realize what you thought you wanted to do, or your idea is too vague. And once you start, you get this feedback of like, oh, I need something more specific to narrow down my goal so that it actually fits me, what my skills are, who I want to be, and what I want to do. So obstacles, while it may be frustrating, be like, oh no, like I really did horribly in accounting, but then maybe you're like, oh, but accounting maybe isn't my thing. Maybe it's really, I like to help people and I should be like a patient care technician. So it's not necessarily a negative, but it's information for us to take. I want you to take a moment and think about your obstacles. And in addition to obstacles are pitfalls. So I literally have a picture of a pit. I was looking for, I don't know, pictures of traps and pits. This is the best one I could find. So the point is, it's like you're walking along, you think all is great, and suddenly like you fall through a hole in the ground. So, it's a trap, right? It gets you stuck. We all have our pitfalls. My pitfall is like when I get on an idea that's really interesting to me, then I could be like go off for like 5 hours researching it and just like end up God knows where. So like for me, it's really important when I do things that I have a really like a strict end deadline in mind. Like this is it. I cannot surpass that time because that keeps me focused. So that's one pitfall for me. For others, like family, it's not necessarily a negative pitfall, but it's a responsibility. It's like, you could have your day perfectly planned and everything looks beautiful. And all of a sudden you get a call from school, you have to take your child home from school. Or like something happens where maybe you have a family member who gets sick and now you have to go to the hospital, something that really throws your schedule off. So, take this moment. And if you haven't got it yet, I want you to have like a piece of paper in front of you. So hopefully you've written down a goal. For those of you who join us late, just think of goal and then think about what for you are like your traps. Okay. And they're not necessarily negative things in your life. It could be something really important. Like my family is really important to me, but they could be a negative trap from me reaching a particular end goal, okay? So I want you to take a moment and write those down. Thanks, Essence. Absolutely. Facebook, social media, procrastination, lack of confidence. So both outside things of us and inside things of us. Facebook and social media, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, like, once you start watching them, oh, it's so entertaining. It's like this like deep tunnel that once you start sliding down, it's really hard to stop. And they're set up that way. Like that's why we all love it so much, because it's so easy to keep going and just like consume. And it's interesting you say the lack of confidence. So that's our internal, what's on the inside of us. And absolutely, success breeds success. But the opposite is not necessarily true. Failure does not breed more failure. Failure can breed success, right? Because it's all about what we do with when we hit these obstacles. So I have here a picture of stair steps, and it's written in chalk. It says, you don't have to see the whole staircase, just take the first step. So sometimes it can be that our goals that we have set for ourselves seem unreachable. So if that's the case, you have to think, well, first, is my goal realistic? So I have to speak with students. Sometimes they're like, okay, I am going into healthcare management because my parents or family member had such a negative experience in their hospice or nursing care facility that is just wrong, and I want to be part of that change. Okay, great motivation. But let's say the student does not actually like science. They're like, well, I've never really been good. I don't like touching blood. I don't like, I'm a little afraid of needles. Okay, so once they start the program, they have this goal in mind, but I want to change how nursing care facilities are run. So they started out thinking nursing, being like, all right, I'm going to get into the field. And once I start doing it, I'm going to be the one who changes how it's done. When they start doing the classes, they realize, oh, there's a lot to nursing that I'm actually, not really comfortable with. Okay, so what they realize is, all right, the goal may not be realistic for this person. Let's say they have a real phobia of they have real strong dislike of bodily fluids and things like that. Okay, nursing may not be the way to go, right? But once they realize that, does that mean, so they took their first step and they're like, oh, maybe this is not the direction I want to go. It's an obstacle, it's a pitfall, it's a something. And they say, okay, well, they have to rethink what direction they want to go. Let's say they're actually really good at communication and a great manager of dealing with 1,000 moving parts at once. So actually a better fit might be in healthcare management, right? Where they're really able to make sure that, communication between nursing technicians and assistants, that piece doesn't fall through the cracks. And that could lead to a negative nursing experience, right? So that you set a goal, sometimes your goal, if it's not realistic, and as you go along your way and you hit that point, it doesn't mean that it's the end, right? It doesn't mean that, okay, I have to start over, or that I made a huge mistake. What it is you just have to address it and find a way to rephrase the goal in a way that will work for you. And that's why we have career counselors, personal counselors, and academic coaches, because this work is hard to do. And sometimes it really helps to have an outside perspective. All right. So next, another thing is treating school like a job. All right. I have a quote here from Oprah Winfrey, picture of mountains. And she says, do what you have to do until you can do what you want to do. So if you treat school like a job, just like a job, hopefully there are things you like to do in your job, some things that you're okay with, and some things you really can't stand, right? School is no different. There's some classes or projects that, you just love. This teacher, she's just so entertaining, or he presents material in a way that you completely understand, okay, that it makes a subject you don't like interesting. Okay, so maybe you have that experience. Then you have the classes or assignments that are just okay, they're not thrilling, but they don't really get your goal. They're just okay, you can do it. And then you have those where the class doesn't seem to make sense, the way the professor talks is really disorganized, or, just the whole thing just seems like a negative experience. So what happens in these situations? If you think about your job, to be successful in your job, you have to figure out how to negotiate that. So if you think about learning in school like your job, there's this part where you just accept that it all has to get done at the end, right? You have to get through it somehow. You don't want, for instance, a negative coworker or some part of your job to be such a horrible experience for you that you quit your job. Maybe that happens, but what if you really love everything else about the job? What if the job actually pays you really well? Okay, well, the same thing with your degree. What if everything is great in your degree, except for maybe you really don't like advanced spreadsheets or statistics or marketing, or this one other class you have to take that requires a lot of group work, and that's not your thing. So if you accept, all right, I just have to do this, right? I have to find a way to get through this. But my goal is to minimize how much pain and bruises, how hurt I get while going through it. Okay. So in that case, if you can accept the fact, okay, I gotta do this, how can I help make my way to the end of that one class so I can finish it up and go on to my degree? How can I make that go as smoothly as possible? And again, that's where the resources on campus are here to help you. So it requires a couple things. If you see, you have to say, well, what can I control and what can I not? What can I do to help and what can I not? Accommodations are a part of that, right? But still, even with accommodations in place, there's still limitations to it, right? With accommodations, while you may get extra time, it's not like you have unlimited time, right? It's not like you can extend the semester as long as you wish to get your assignments done. So even with some helps, there still are other factors that come to play, right? So for some of you, that's why in addition to accommodations, we also have you working with a coach, because a lot of it is figuring out for you, what is the extra little, what's another little piece? What's a little something that's an issue that you have that could be worked through? Because for all of us, we all have it, right? We have our strengths, we have our weaknesses. Like I said earlier, for me, sometimes I can get down that rabbit hole and then I never stop going. And then I forget the main point. So here, the point of, you do what you have to do, you accept that, get through school, get through that one horrible class or whatever it is, or that professor, that negative experience, so that you can keep going towards your future goal. So what's really important to you. All right. If anyone who just joined that has any questions or they want to chime in with anything before I continue. All right, let's see. Okay, so if we're looking at figuring out how to be successful online, and we know that online learning is pretty much self-directed, and it's already a given that we have lots of distractions and responsibilities around us that really take us easily away from studying. How do we then really make studying less painful and kind of something that we already do, right? When our days are already packed. So if we take the other slide where we're thinking about doing school is like doing a job, it's our job, then we have to say, all right, well, if it's a job, then we have to build it in to our everyday, right? So our habits, which are like behaviors we've had that we've done for a long time, when our habits can be great until one day they're not, or maybe they're really not helpful. Like they're okay. It might be like a way we cope by like escaping by watching TV, or having a glass of wine at the end of the day. Maybe this is a way which, some people have chosen to deal with the stress in their lives. So it works. But then when you throw school in the mix, maybe that your daily routine, how you've coped with dealing with the rest of your stress, is not going to work anymore. So you might have to come up with a new one. So here I have a quote by John Maxwell, and it says, "You'll never change your life until you change something you do daily. The secret of your success is found in your daily routine." So your daily routine. And when we look at students who are able to do school successfully, especially online, what they're able to do is every day they have a set time block that they devote solely to school. And if you already know that this time is that you've already scheduled it for school, then you will be less likely to schedule and do other things during that time. Maybe it's every day from 9 to 11 p.m., every day. So that if you let your family know, You let everybody around you know, you don't schedule work around them if possible. Like it's just every day, it's 9 to 11 p.m. If you have a friend who says you want to go out, can you do something with me? You're like, I cannot until the end of the semester because 9 to 11 p.m. That is my study block, okay? Ways to do this, I am going to skip forward, is I am going to share this. Let's see. I am going to share a couple documents. Let me see. Sharing sound. I want to drop a document into the chat. That's what I'm looking for. See if I can do that. My computer. All right. There you go. Can everybody see that? Put in a sample time schedule. All right. So this is a blank time schedule. If you can, definitely download it. Right now, if you have your pencil and paper in hand, and just make notes on what to do. So the point of this is that you're going to put in things that are not movable, like your work schedule, okay? Whether you know in the upcoming week that you're going to work Saturday, Sunday at night, or if you're going to work Monday through Thursday, from 12 to 6, whatever it is you put that down, right, in your schedule. And then you put the time it takes to get to and from work or whatever responsibility you have. You put that down around it, okay? And then you put in your other responsibilities that you have to do. And then once you've done all that, you'll see you should have some blocks of time that's left. If you see that you really don't have a lot, your schedule is so packed that you don't have maybe more than 3 or 4 hours of free time a night, all right, then I want you to come talk with me or talk with a counselor, because we have to talk about, whether, your being in school right now is ideal for you, or, if you have enough time to do your schoolwork. It's very important, right? Because you have to have enough time to do all your responsibilities. You have to have enough time to rest, and then you have to have enough time to dedicate to school. If I know a lot of students do this because they have no choice, right? They will, sleep less so they can get their schoolwork done. But then you have to find some point during the week or during the couple months where you will make up that lost rest time, right? It's so important because without time to rest and be away from school and work and all your responsibilities, we all reach our tipping point where we just break, right? Either we get sick, we stress out, we end up just forgetting about school because it's just too overwhelming. So finding that is so important. And if it means that you take 1 class a semester or 2 classes a semester, then you do that. If financial problems come into play and that's a problem, then that's a discussion to be had. I speak with students about that quite a lot to see what are other options, because I know being full-time is often very important so that you can get financial aid covered. But again, if it leads you to having semester after semester of really stressed out schedules where it's just too much, you can't make it work, well then, being in school isn't helpful for you. And the last thing we want, any of us want, is for you to be in school and have it be a negative, stressful experience, which ends up making you feel ill, right? It's not how we want it to be. So it's really, really important that we find a way that works for you. And in a presentation like this, where it's everyone everyone on a screen, we can't do that personally one-on-one. But that's why, and for those of you who speak with me, you always know I'll go through it with you, right? Or I tell you, you really need to speak with a counselor and kind of go through this because it's so personal and there's no one right solution. But first things first is you have to see, and you have to be really honest with yourself about actually how much time you have. I'm going to go back a little bit, because in addition to how much time you have, it's also about knowing, let's see, escape. All right. It's also about how do you use the time you have. Okay. So this is an old time management chart. Some students love this. They love it more than the schedule. And what it does is to say, all right, if you're more of a bigger picture person and listing everything in that chart, for some people, especially if you're a perfectionist and you're really rigid, it might actually make you more stressed, okay? Then you might want to start with this first. So what you want to do is take a broader view and look at how do you tend to spend the time in your life? You know, are you one where you always feel like you're spending a lot of time in crisis? Like, is it always like that you feel like you're running from place to place and running late? Or that you're always, you know, you're like, oh no, I have a paper due. Like you always feel like there's a deadline coming up that you're not meeting. Okay, so that's the important, urgent, like crisis things. We really don't want to spend most of our energy here because this is exhausting. Like there's only so much in our spirit and soul where we can spend doing this before we are just completely exhausted, right? And then we have so that's the important and urgent quadrant. The next quadrant, this square over here, is important and not urgent things. This is actually where we want to spend most of our time, right? So this is where you hope that you can schedule the things you have in your life so that you can spend most of your time here. There are things that are important to you, but doesn't stress you out to have to get it done. So this is like, you know, normal family responsibilities that you have, right? You know, your work that you have to do and you're studying, okay? Now, in this corner down here, we have our urgent and not important things, okay? So these are things that are really important, but they're not things that in the end run really help you achieve your goals, okay? So it's like a last minute meeting that comes up that everyone has to go to that could have been told to you in an email versus having to get on a Zoom call, right? Or it could be like when your boss just goes on and on about something, you're like, okay, this really isn't important, I need to get back to my work, okay? Or, you know, they're distractions, right? It could, and in your mind, it could be like, okay, a distraction could be that you forgot that a family member or child has some appointment or something that you have to take them to. And if you had remembered, you would have gotten someone else to take them. Or maybe at the last minute, you had to go and get them from school when really in the long run, it ends up that you didn't have to go. So things that may have been important, but in the long run, they're not, okay? And then in the bottom right-hand corner, the not urgent, not important things. So this is like the TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, Netflix, TV time. Now, is it really a waste? I think waste is a little harsh. I think what the point of this corner is to say, these are things that if you do them, they're not necessarily going to lead you to achieving your goal. So just like the important, urgent, this not important, not urgent, you want to save them up for like rewards, like when you have done something important. You don't want to spend the majority of your time doing these things because they don't lead you towards your goal. Now, I find this time allotment interesting. 75% that you spend most of your time on what's important and not urgent, and 15% on the urgent, not important, and just 5% on the rest. Now, if we did like math and we calculated, I don't know anyone who can really hit this unless you have, you know, someone who can clean your house, someone who can take care of your kids. Like you have someone that you can like dole out all your responsibilities. This is a really hard percentage to fit, right? On the other hand, it tells you where, you know, you want to try. So don't try to spend your time, okay? So don't use these numbers as like, oh, this is a minimum that I have to try to reach. Use it in your mind as like, okay, what can I do to try to get my time to fall into those categories? All right. I want to open up, since we are at 1:30, for time for people to talk. So, students, anybody to talk about, like, again, as I said, I want to talk about the pitfalls. So I talked about what you try to do. You try to have goals, you try to manage your time, right? You try to find a way to treat school like a job. But what about all the distractions and things that get in the way? Anybody, feel free to unmute yourself and talk about, what's for you, what's the issue? And staff, you can feel free to chime in too. I'm going to stop sharing here. I know for me, let me close that. Can everyone see each other? Are we all looking at each other right now? Okay. Yep. So I know, like, for me, one of my big pitfalls is, getting the stuff done that I don't like to do. It's not just that I don't like to do it, but it's like I'm not naturally good at it. And it just takes a lot of energy out of me to get it done. So, one of those things is like, I actually try to get them done first thing in the morning. I get into my email before work starts. I try to, I look at what I have to do for the day. I make sure I look at what I have to do for the week. I've set up little reminders for myself. But it's too stressful for me if I set due dates on, like, the tasks that aren't completed. So I will leave them undated. Okay, so it's just things I need to get to, but, like, that aren't getting done. They have to get done, but, like, not right away. So I'll leave them undated, and I have this running list, and I'll look at them, and I'll be like, oh, yes, 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 yes. And then I look at it, and then I'll be like, okay, well, I'm going to set up a meeting with someone, because when I set up a meeting, I want to make sure my meetings, I don't waste their time, that it's productive. So I'll set up a meeting with them, and then I will prepare, because for me, I feel horrible if I'm unprepared in a meeting. So it'll really make me feel like, not just like, it'll make me feel like incompetent, like unprepared, like all my own issues come up, right? So I set it up so that I'll get myself all prepared, and I'll be at the meeting, and I'll do something that's important. And I know I will feel good at the end, and I know I can do it. It's just really hard to get myself going. So that's one way I set myself to get tasks done that aren't, especially if it's something I don't know about, like budgeting, or, like, I don't know, something I have, like, no idea, right, that I have to do for the first time. I'll do that and that I'll do my best. I'll give my best. And then I will say in the meeting, all right, this is what I know, and this is what I don't know, and this is what I need your help with. So that's one way I've learned of how to deal with stuff like that.
Catherine, I'm going to speak for Kayla Silver, who doesn't have her microphone today, but she wrote in the chat, my microphone isn't working, but when I get pulled in several different directions, kind of like what Amari said, always saying yes. And Amari said, I'm still trying to learn how to say no, which is very hard to do at times, causing me to feel overwhelmed.
All right. So, so good. It's so true, right? Because a lot of successful people tend to be people pleasers and perfectionists and overachievers. And deep down, they either like themselves, they think they're not really good at it. Like, let me tell you, that's like, they think they're an imposter, that one day everyone's going to find out they don't really know what they're doing. Like, this is true for a lot of people. And so they're like, so a couple things. If you're the pulled in lots of directions because there's a competence issue, you need to show that, yeah, actually I can do everything. Because if I let people know that I can't do it, then they're going to think of me as a failure. So that's one reason people say yes to everything. The other reason people say yes to people is because they really want people to like them. They're like, oh, well, like, growing up, how do you get approval from people who are important to you, right? You behaved, you did what they wanted you to do, because if you didn't, they were disappointed in you, or you felt guilty. So, like, you grow up feeling that. So now, as an adult, it's sort of like, well, you got to free yourself from, like, the childhood you. You, as an adult, get to figure out, well, what really is important to you. It is your life you're living now, right? You're not living your parents' life anymore, or whatever expectations have, or maybe you're trying to like overcome, right? All the experience, like maybe you're like, oh, I don't want to be like them at all. So there are all these things that come into play again, which is why our counselors here are such wonderful resources, because they're all legitimate, they're all real, and they're all things that may force us to do things that we really don't want to do. Now, if you're doing something for someone because it's the right thing to do, because you are a good person, you're a kind person, and you have the resources to do it, you have the time, you have the energy, it's not going to cause you to do poorly in school, or you're not going to end up losing your job because you said yes to someone and they made you feel really guilty that if you didn't take them to a doctor's appointment, then you're not a good friend or a good daughter or a good niece or whatever, but then you end up losing your job because you always have to do that. See, now that's an issue. And that's where it's really important to say, all right, well, what's a healthy boundary, right? What's the difference between saying no because I'm selfish and saying no because it's not good for me? Like this, it's really, really hard balance. And I think a lot of us have grown up where, finding that balance and being able to communicate it and express it to the people in our lives is difficult. And I think a lot of people, we spend our lives working through it, but it's important to know that you need to value that. Is that always saying yes? Well, what does that mean? Does that mean then that you're not important? That your needs aren't important? Like what are your reasons for always saying yes? And don't like beat yourself down for what those reasons are, because we all experience them. What your reasons are, just know they're universal. It's not like, oh, well, I'm the only one who really thinks, I'm like, if I say no, then that means I'm a bad leader, or I don't know what I'm doing, like I'm the only one. You absolutely are not. Like it is literally every one of us, like all of us, like me on the screen. Okay. And, I'm happy to share with you all my failures. Right. And I say, it's so funny. Like I get a little harsh with my kids, right? Because I have high expectations, but I'm always like, oh, let me tell you about my failure. Let me tell you how I messed that up. And let me tell you, when I said yes to this one thing, and then my boss called, like, why did you do that? I'd be like, okay. But now, because I have worked through my issues, I'll be like, okay, I can respond in a way that's not defensive, in a way in which I can learn from it. So just know that if that is something you do, welcome to the crowd. So glad you acknowledged it. And now you can do something about it. Is it something you want to work on? Great. Call your counselor, call your coach. Talk to different people, your professors, Vincent, me, talk to all of us, and you will say, oh, well, this is how one person handled it. This is how that person handled it. And you can find what works for you. And that's really important to know that the answer is not that you always have to say yes, right? Let's see. Kayla, okay, we did address yours. Did I answer what you had to say in a bit? Or if you want more? Santa, did you want to say something? I saw Santa. Did Santa raise her hand or okay, maybe she had to go.
I had a quick question, Catherine.
Yeah.
What happens if you have so many pitfalls? You talked about pitfalls, things that just keep knocking you down and you just keep falling in the pit. How do you get yourself out of that, or maybe like make them not as important as the rest of them? Like what happens when it gets overwhelming and you can't seem to clear the pitfalls?
All right. So let's like make this literally. Like we're literally walking through the forest and there's like pitfall after, or let's make it like a landmine. There's landmine after landmine after landmine. Some don't hurt so much. Some are just like annoyances. Like you step on a stick and it like pokes you. Okay. But some like are really hurtful. Like it takes like, oh, I need 2 weeks to recover from that. So if you find yourself like you're always just walking at one after another, and they just seem to be coming nonstop, then I say, well, why are you still walking? You need to stop walking, climb a tree and look down and say, whoa, what does my environment look like? Why are there all these mines and pitfalls in the way? And then you say to yourself, well, but look over there. There are no mines or pitfalls over there. How do I get over there? So you have to take a look, take a step back and say, well, what are these mines and pitfalls? Can I not see them? Is there a reason I can't see them? If they're hidden, how do I unhide them? Like, is there something I can do to clear it up? Is it a particular friend who always at the last minute is like needs your help with something or needs you to drive them somewhere? Like, is it a particular person? Like, is it you or is it them? Okay. If it's them, be like, oh, I need to renegotiate my relationship with this person. Do I need to minimize how much time I spend with them? Let's say it's like your mother, a family member that you just can't be like, see ya, right? You're like, all right, well, maybe I'm gonna limit it to like 30 minutes on the way home from work, or 1 hour every other day, where I'll be like, and if she texts me and calls me, be like, hey, I'm really busy right now. I saw what you wrote. We'll talk about it when I call you tomorrow. Again, it's that boundary setting, like finding ways so you don't feel like you're just totally cutting off the people in your life and you no longer love them. And like, oh, you think you're so important because you're in school. Well, it's not that. It's just that school takes a lot of time, right? And a lot of resources and energy out of you. So it's saying, all right, well, how am I going to speak with this person? And you have to say, is this person, like, sometimes we have toxic people in our lives that you can't get rid of. Be like, okay, well, can I minimize my exposure to them for a little while? And if not, all right, well, like for every negative experience, you want something positive. Be like, okay, after I had this conversation with them that really drains me, what am I going to do for myself that I feel better about? Like it's all about that self-care piece, because especially if you can't just not deal with them. Now, but the pitfalls that you have to kind of figure out if there's a pattern. If you're always falling in pitfalls and mines, probably there's something, there's a pattern that you can figure out that can be figured out. I happen to love looking for things like that. So, you guys are all welcome. Come talk to me about that. And I know the counselors are really, really good at that. So you can always speak with the counselor about that too, right? Like, it's sort of like, well, what is it? Or maybe it's your own thinking, right? Your own trap of like, oh, look, I did bad in that class. I'm just dumb. Can't do it, And if that's the pitfall, and absolutely that exists, right? And that's to say, you have to be realistic and say, is that really true? If I am dumb, then how did I get into college? How have I made it this far in life? Like, you can't be completely inept, lacking skills, and unable to do things. Otherwise, you wouldn't be here today. So that sort of like extreme thinking isn't true.
Thank you for that response. Excellent.
Yeah, on the other hand, it's not like, oh, well, I don't have to study and I expect to get A's. Well, that's not realistic either, right? And let's say you work really hard. You work. You've done everything, tutoring, coaching, counseling, and still, it's not working for you. Well, then maybe the answer is a different kind of school, right? Like, that's a possibility, and that is okay. So maybe you have put yourself in the wrong environment that's not healthy for you. And that is not a sign of failure. That's a sign of being like, well, I gotta stop. I'm not in a place that's good for me. I have to put myself in a healthy environment. It's not me. It's not other people. It's just not a good fit. And a lot of times relationships are like that, right? You meet the perfect person, everything's so great, but oh my God, like it's like you're always running parallel to each other and you never really seem to connect, or you're always like going crisscross and ends. Why? Even though they're a great person, it doesn't mean you're a horrible person, or they're a horrible person, right? It's about the two having to fit with each other. So I think that's really important. And it's something to really kind of take a step back and think about. So my first thing is always to pause and look back, and without blaming anybody, yourself, other people, no blame. Just really honestly be like, what is going on? And assess in a very kind and gentle way. So we are actually past our time for an ending. So I am going to stop our conversation now. I want to thank you all for joining us. We are going to have more events like this. Our next one, we definitely going to talk about disability accommodations and how accommodations are changing. So we're going to have that presentation. If there is something else you would like to talk about or chat about, please send me an email. My email is knw, N as in Nancy, even though that's not my middle name, at berkeleycollege.edu. Shoot me an email or you can call me. And I look forward to seeing you all at a future event. So thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, everybody.
Take good care.
Thank you, Katherine.
Bye-bye.
Bye.